Once upon an uncommonly warm late September Sunday in Santa Clarita, California, a socially awkward, overweight poser with a YouTube channel and his elf ears somehow managed to bring together a similarly uncommon gathering of 8 unique, talented skateboarders, all sharing a common goal of competing in a game of flat tournament. The double elimination contest began at 11 a.m. and concluded roughly 4 hours and 14 games later, with number 1 seed Seva Krutkov surviving the minor bracket after a loss to Zach Doling, the former going on to face the number 2 seed Tom Asta in a grand finals for the ages. The day began with Seva facing Santa Clarita's local stuntman Snappy, the number 1 seed versus the number 8 seed, in what would end up being not only the shortest game, but also the only game of the day where 0 tricks were successfully defended. The first game went by quickly, but Snappy kept his spirits high and would return later for the first round of the minor bracket.
Before that day, I didn't even skate for like a week straight. I do describe my skating more as like stunts than like technical stuff. But I feel like I can like hold my own with flat ground, but I didn't really show that in my games of skate. If I lose the Rochambeau, like it's over. Like I already know I was gonna get like blanked. But if I had the Rochambeau, I thought I was gonna I just wanted to hold it for as long as possible. This was my plan before the game even started, just to hold it, just run through all the basic tricks, and maybe get him like a singular letter if he messes up on something simple, you know?
Yeah.
But, oh man, I did not expect to like mess up my basic stuff, you know? I think I just had like a bad day.
Yeah.
I think what it was is literally the first trick, he does a shove it, and then I do a shove it.
We got a pop. No pop? Oh, God. Come on, Kelly, speak up.
And then fucking gifted haters like, Kelly Hart, Snappy didn't pop it, shove it. Telling the teacher, hey, you forgot to hand out the homework, like right before class, like. and then I missed the shove it after that, and that like just threw everything off. And then after I missed the shove it was downhill. It was a downhill spiral.
So the crowd intervention kind of threw you off, is what you're saying?
No, it was funny. It was hyping me up. I think the crowd is what made it, like, not, like, scary, you know?
Okay.
Because, like, once the game starts, it's, like, all, like, silent usually. But the crowd, like, made it, like, a little fun thing to do.
What's your favorite Misfits song?
Astro Zombies. There was a My Chemical Romance cover of Astro Zombies in Tony Hawk American Wasteland. And that's what, like, put me on to Misfits when I heard that when I was, like, 11.
What was a personal highlight of the day for you?
Dude, honestly, just, like, seeing all those guys. Because I've always seen them on, like, social media. And, like, just, like, finally, like, kicking with them. Gifted Hater and Chris Chan, like, they're sick in person. I've never, like, seen them before. Like, I knew, like, maybe, like, half the people because I've just seen them around. But just, like, chilling with them, skating with them. Kelly Hart was there. That was sick. Just kicking them after, talking with them. Yeah, so it's like just meeting everyone.
The second game between Zach and Jeff DeCesare ended up being a combination of the icebreaker to relieve tension among the motley crew, but also the strangest, most controversial game of the day. The heaviest controversy started with, yep, you guessed it, a fakey impossible, a problematic trick to begin with, and even more so in a game of skate. In this case, especially considering Jeff already suffered a letter from a regular impossible. In real time, the trick set on offense looks wrapped, the crucial ingredient in an impossible where at least some part of the popping foot remains in direct contact with grip tape throughout the entirety of the board's rotation. But after seeing the trick in slow motion, the wrapping requirements were at best only partially fulfilled, putting both Jeff, the defender, and Kelly Hart, skateboarding celebrity, experienced and prominent industry veteran, SLS judge, and the tournament's referee, somewhere between a rock and a hard place. Because if offense only partially wraps an intended impossible, how much wrap does defense have to fulfill? Jeff proceeded to successfully land a fakie 3 pop, but Kelly did not approve, although allowing a redo, and because de Cesare refused to attempt to at least partially wrap the trick on another attempt, he submitted to taking a third letter early in the game. The lesson learned here is that if you're on offense and you want to piss people off, including yourself, do as many impossible variations in a competitive flat ground game of skate as possible, because unlike kickflips and shove-its and their plethora of variations, there doesn't even seem to be an established unanimous agreement about what the actual hell an impossible even is as a trick. Rodney Mullen, the inventor of the impossible, claimed that the trick is defined by its end-over-end rotation. But in order to do that, the majority of impossible practitioners wrap the trick, and Jeff getting his third letter early in his first game on a trick that neither rotates end-over-end nor is fully wrapped made the denial of his fakie 3 pop on defense a catalyst for tension you could cut with a knife. Solutions to solving the impossible dilemma in games of skate can go two different ways. One can be to simply deny impossibles just like grabs and plant-based tricks, or even go so far as to ban all wrap-type tricks. The other solution is to require a mandatory replay by the referee after the skater on offense rolls away from an alleged impossible in order to better verify the wrap took place. Both solutions are not ideal, however, because a fully wrapped impossible that doesn't necessarily fulfill end-over-end requirements that Rodney demanded is still culturally accepted, and there were examples from other skaters in the same tournament that properly wrapped the trick. Therefore, banning the trick entirely is a little extreme, and breaking the rhythm of the game to review a replay on one trick is a little disruptive. What we're left with is that the skaters in the game who are setting tricks have no choice but to be the ones held accountable for their own trick selection. And if they're not willing to endure the backlash that will undoubtedly follow them, like in this example with two back-to-back impossible variations, one of which was objectively not properly executed, they might want to reevaluate their prioritization with attempting impossibles in a game of skate. Because as simple as it could have been for Kelly to just give Jeff the green light on the defensive fakie 3 pop, impossibles and 360 shove-its are technically two distinctly different tricks. Or maybe a partially wrapped, partially 360 shove-it is its own trick, and we can call it the imposter bowl, a term thrown at the wall in a previous video about this exact situation with Shane O'Neill.
All impossible.
I'm curious what you think would be a good stance on impossibles for games of skate in general.
My stance is, and I realize so many people are going to disagree with me, but I don't care. This is just my opinion. No one's opinion's right or wrong. Impossibles in games of skate, if you're on offense, I think you should let 3 shoves slide. If you pop the 3 shove, I think on offense you should let it slide. Zach was doing a 3 shove more or less, but you guys count it as an impossible. So obviously they're very similar tricks. And I've seen a lot of stuff slide on offense before that probably shouldn't have, including a lot of my tricks in the game. If you're going to do a trick that's like that similar, I don't know. I feel like you should just let it count. On offense, not defense. Because if you're going to set a defense, you should do it proper.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people will agree with you.
No, not a lot of people are at all. I'm just saying that's my opinion.
What do you think about, you could do either two things. You could do just no impossibles allowed, or if you do an impossible, it has to be reviewed to make sure you wrapped it. Because in real time, it kind of looked like Zach wrapped it in real time. It took slow motion to really see that his foot didn't, stick to the board. Would that kind of mitigate the problem?
See, that's the thing. I don't think you should completely take impossibles out of games of skate because it's unfair to people that are actually good at them. And 2, reviewing it in slow-mo, we don't that's too much. That's too extra. It's just a fun game of skate. Like, we don't need to do all that. Maybe if it's like a competitive skate, like money on the line like we were doing, maybe, yeah. But if it's just like a fun game of skate, that's too much. That's what I'm saying. If someone does an impossible, but it's like it's actually a 3 shove and sets it, they play it off like it's an impossible and maybe it's not, then like just let the other person do a 3-shove, because it's the same thing. And then say they really did do an impossible, and then I don't know where I'm going with this, but like it's like that's just too much effort. Just like that's what I'm saying. Just 3-shove is so really similar. Like offense, like just let it, if they land it, just let it go. Like it's not a huge deal to me. I mean, I'm saying that because I can't impossible.
A lot of the complaints in the comments are going to be about the impossibles if there's no, solution.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my game with Jamie Griffin, he did an impossible on me, and I did a 3-shove.
And they counted it.
The judge let it slide, and that was the only thing they talked about in the comments. They were like, "Oh, Jamie would have won if they didn't count." I'm like, bruh, he got me to S. He would have got. I would have had K if they didn't count it. Like, it would have made no difference. But either way, yes, people seem to feel very strongly about that trick. So I don't know. I really don't know. That's a hard question, and I kind of feel bad about saying whatever I just did. But I guess I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna stand on business with that one.
After the impossibles, the Zach versus Jeff game proceeded relatively smoothly, with DeCesare getting an unlucky tee on a failed fakie tray attempt, and once that happened, Doling laid down the flat ground hammer with an authoritative 5-pop. Jeff, whose back is against the wall, immediately requested permission to send his attempts down the 6, and keeping in mind that Zach did not have any letters yet, Kelly allowed the request in the hopes to keep the game alive. And while Jeff's first attempt did not seem promising, the unthinkable occurred when he rolled away from his last attempt down the set. The game resumed with yet even more controversy when Jeff's defensive inward heel flip in response to Zach's offensive pressure flip was approved by the official. For those who might not know, a pressure flip's rotation is the same as an inward heel flip, but the popping foot on the pressure flip completes 100% of the trick, and your front foot does nothing except getting the fuck out of the way. Jeff, whose eccentric flip trick hucking prowess is second to none, technically flips his inward heel flips with his front foot, but it's so subtle and with an unconventional part of the foot that to the naked eye, it looks like it could be confused for a pressure flip. A mix of confusion, frustration, amusement, and a dash of nervous excitement was now pulsing through everyone involved with this game.
Going into these games, I genuinely felt like it was going to be like a loosely fun type of scenario. I think the toughest one for me was Zach and Jeff DeCesare, because Zach was clearly going to win. That when I let Jeff 540 shove it off the 6 there, which I did not think he was going to land. Like, for entertainment purposes and like whatever, I was like, dude, yeah, do it off the 6 there. Good luck. And then he did it. And I was like, oh my God, that was nuts.
What was a personal highlight of the day for yourself? I think I know the answer, but I'm just curious.
Come on, dude. It was the 540 shove. That was like, after I landed that, I didn't care what. Well, I mean, I didn't really care anyway. But like after that, it was a good day. I was like, all right, I got myself a new trick. Actually, ironically, yesterday I tried to film that trick on a gap for video part I'm doing. I couldn't get it. I got close, but I'm like, it just opened up doors to like more tricks I can do now. The whole thing behind that was like, I was just goofing around. Like I did not expect Kelly to be like, yeah, that's okay if you do that down the stairs. I was kind of saying that sarcastically, but then when he was like, yeah, if you do that, it counts. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm really gonna try then. And I surprised myself because like I may have done that trick once or twice in my life ever before that, and it's been years. So that was a big highlight for me.
An offensive back 3 big spin from Zach looked like the game would finally come to an end without Jeff ever having a chance to set a trick. On his second and final attempt, Jeff landed an over-rotated back big spin, but very obviously tic-tacked the remaining 145-ish degrees, pushing the limits of what's passable even on defense. To be fair, Zach's attempted death blow was heavily pivoted 180 degrees, and more than 90 degrees of the pivot was on 4 wheels. Another example of a trick choice that won't do you any favors if you're trying to avoid controversy, especially on a trick that will potentially end the game. Kelly left the decision up to the rest of the field as to whether or not this game should continue, and while some voices pushed back, the majority ruled in favor of Jeff staying alive. Zach missed an offensive switch hard, giving Jeff his first opportunity to set a trick, and he proceeded with 4 fundamental flip tricks, giving Zach 1 letter in the process. A couple turnovers later, Zach set an offensive switch hard flip, and brought to light another example of a trick that can be executed in a style that, let's say, generates discussion. Not as controversial as impossibles or even egregious pivoting, but the physics of frontside flips and hard flips result in some skaters learning Muska style or illusion style, where it's hard to distinguish the actual flip portion of the trick because the board is vertical in the air. And along with a tic-tac, the potential death blow switch hard in the Zach vs. Jeff game did not cool down the temperature of the previously mentioned concoction of mixed heightened emotions. Similar to Jeff's inward heel flips, his flick on switch hards are uniquely difficult to identify without a video replay, showing that he flicks with the bottom of his foot, and also showing a distinction between the illusion style versus what purists might call the proper version. Virtually the same thing happened with the nollie hard flip in terms of illusion versus a distinct inward kickflip style, but 1 turn later, Zach pivoted his bigger flip within the acceptable 90 degrees or less parameters, and the game finally came to a relieving conclusion after Jeff missed 2 attempts.
That was a tough one, and I know people were like, oh, man, that was a horrible call. I'm like, dude, I was just trying to be fun and have a good time. I just knew he was going to win. I didn't want it to end in fucking 2 minutes.
Right.
So that might have been something. I mean, next time, hey, you know what? Cutthroat judging, that's fine. But I was just trying to have fun with it, and at the end of the day, the right person won.
Game 3 was a relatively much more digestible and drama-free matchup between 3-time Battle at the Barracks competitor and YouTube superstar Chris Chan versus the pleasant, skilled underdog from Bakersfield, Mowgly. The 53-turn game was the longest at the time of its completion, and in addition to Jeff's run-in with a crack in his first game, Mowgly unfortunately suffered a letter from a crack on a switch front 3 attempt.
Was there a trick that you were personally happiest with?
Oh, fucking kickflip. Because I always miss kickflip in games of skates, like when they're competitive. And that's why, like, I wanted to try it on offense to, like, break that curse, and I landed it. I was fucking stoked on that.
What was a personal highlight of the day for yourself?
Playing Chris and him saying something about I didn't miss the kickflip. And I thought about that and then just made my kickflip rocket, but I somehow missed the shove it. And that was hilarious. I think that was hilarious. Like, that threw me off, and I got it stuck in my head. And since then, I've been practicing pop shove-its on flat.
A standout statistic that originated from Chris and Mowgly's game is that the back heel would end up being the trick missed defensively by the most skaters. Tom being the only skater to defend one, and 4 of the 8 competitors that day all got at least 1 letter from a backside heel flip. Seva suffering 2 throughout his games. Chris ended up winning on a backside hard flip, only getting 1 letter from Mowgly in the process, leaving Chan to progress in the major bracket along with Zach and Seva, while Mowgly would face the loser of the 4th and final first round game. In that game, the number 7 seed just so happened to be the most popular YouTube skateboarding personality of the last few years and a skilled flat ground skater to boot. The Gifted Hater going against the number 2 seed, a Battle at the Barracks standout and all-around professional skateboarder, hailing from the far eastern lands of Pennsylvania, Mr. Tom Asta. At over 180,000 views, this game was the most watched from that day by nearly 100,000 views, and understandably so considering the matchup. Tom Asta is Battle at the Barracks' 9th ranked skater out of 226 overall in terms of most tricks ever landed across the 21 games he's competed in, with 467 makes. And while his defensive stats aren't as strong as the highest performing skaters in that contest, his 64% defensive rate is still well above the 56% average. This suggests that Tom's success in competitive games of skate has a lot to do with being very consistent at the fundamentals, whittling down his opponents with a relentless onslaught of said fundamentals while on offense. When Tom missed the offensive frontside kickflip against Joah, a window of opportunity opened for some potential damage to inflict on Asta. But instead of carrying out a preconceived game plan, Gifted Hater referred to Kelly Hart for trick selection.
What up? Triple flip. Let's make it a double.
After Gifted missed the double kickflip, Tom gave Joah his second letter on a switch front big, and unable to capitalize on a second chance to control the game, Asta's opponent was statistically facing an astronomically steeper uphill battle to come out on top. But not before displaying some solid defense on a frontside flip, an even more statistically unlikely nollie backside flip, and later with a relatively slightly statistically easier nollie back heel. Instant Karma gave a hands-in-the-pocket nollie kickflip attempt letter A, and a nollie front heel miss combined with apathetic body language gave the cue for prop theatrics in the form of a banana peel throw, an admittedly outside-the-box creative and humorous decision.
What were your thoughts, Tom, going into the contest versus the day of when everyone showed up?
As you text me about it and it becoming a thing and then leading up to it, I did think that it was going to be more, structured, I want to say. Take it more seriously, almost like the Battle of the Barracks. Is the vibe I was getting, like on my way there. And then once I got there, met everybody, and I think a lot of time it was our first time meeting, like all of us a lot, or at least for me, like that was the first time I met like most of those dudes. They were all really cool. I mean, it was chill. They were all really nice, but I think that led, like, I don't know, like, yeah, was it a little bit awkward? Maybe, because like it's not like you're with your best friends, you know. It's like you're just kind of with these people you just met, right. And you kind of know of all of them. You know what I mean? But as far as that went, I thought everyone was super cool. It was fun, like hanging out. Yeah, like I think just like as the day progressed and everyone kind of like read the room a little bit and the vibe was like going the way it was going, it just went to more of like a fun time, and that's what I had. I had a fun time.
Was there ever a point in the game against Joah where you were concerned about losing?
No. The only time I was more nervous before it started, because like before it started, I was, talking with people, my friends from this area. And like once I got to Cali, I was like with Kelly a lot. So I was talking with him about it. And of course everyone thinks like, oh, you're going to win, whatever. And I'm like, all right, but this is a game of skate. A lot of it comes down to who goes first. That dude is good. Like, he has tricks. I've watched his part. I've seen him skate. Like, he's not like he can do shit, Like, and if you play it right, like, he could win, that in the back of my head. So I was like a little nervous about it, but it was all like once it started, I guess, the game, and I saw the way it was going. Yeah, I didn't think there was any way I was losing. No.
Tom would go on to skunk Joah just like Seva did Snappy, resulting in Gifted Hater facing Mowgly in the minor bracket round 1, and Tom moving ahead in the major bracket. Returning to the minor bracket, Jeff and Snappy's game was highlighted by the latter's redemption in landing not just offensive flip tricks, but even holding off Jeff temporarily with a varial flip on defense.
Let's talk about my impossible. Okay, what is the dumb data perspective of my impossible on the game of skate with Jeff? Is it a guided 3-shove with my foot, or was it a real impossible? Let's hear it.
Another example of the problematic nature that impossibles bring to games of skate came from Snappy, who kept his wrap foot in close proximity to grip tape on offense, but still made real-time judgment of what happened difficult. And poor Jeff found himself experiencing deja vu by getting a letter from that trick early in a game yet again. After Snappy turned over the game on a missed nollie varial heel, Jeff swiftly shut down his opponent, eliminating Snappy from further progression and giving to Cesare at least one more game in his journey through the minor bracket.
I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw the bracket, I just looked at who I was playing first, and that's it. I didn't know about the double elimination thing. So I thought, okay, when I'm out, I'm out. I didn't know that I was going to continue playing games afterwards. So I saw I was playing Zach, and I already, like I said in the game, I knew he was going to win.
Right.
So I was like, all right, whatever. I'm just probably going to get out real quick, and then I'm going to go on with my day after that. So I didn't really have any goals of placing anywhere. I just figured I was going to just lose, and that's it.
Closing out the first round of the minor bracket, Joah and Mowgly in the 6th game was one of those rare ones where both skaters found themselves uninterested in progressing further through the bracket, which in this case resulted in a dialogue-heavy, low-trick difficulty comedy sketch, more or less. Editing their game personally had me in stitches, listening to their banter and the lighthearted jabs towards each other, and the post-upload catharsis was almost overwhelming when Gifted Hater left a very thoughtful, respectful comment on the video about how great his experience was with that game and the event overall. Reading some of the supportive replies to his comment makes you wonder where all the animosity towards such a mature and professional individual is derived.
So the game with Joah, I tried to ask you to let me play Jeff skate because I felt like that would be entertaining if somehow we can play skate off the stair set, but you are the boss. You are the one that created this whole event, and we can't go against the terms and conditions that we already agreed on. And then I think he tried to ask you, too, so he could play Snappy. But unfortunately, none of that happened, and it was just the both of us. I was trying to ask him questions as we were skating. I know a lot of people just remember me from Braille and the games of skate that probably never people tried in, and that's what I kind of just took it as. Like, I'm just here to just have fun, try to hang out with maybe somebody that could be a homie, but I don't know, it just turned out whatever that was. And I can't undo that, but in a way it was what it was, and I thought it was still cool.
Well, what do you mean you can't undo that?
Hopefully he comes around and sees that it wasn't that bad. He came out. He was funny when whatever he was trying to do. He thought I wasn't trying. I thought he wasn't trying. We both weren't really trying, right? That's what it was. We both weren't really trying, and we were just I don't know. It was so ridiculous, but it was funny.
It almost seemed like you didn't want to win the game.
I did not. I didn't. But I was just really trying to have fun, and that's my mentality. I didn't really go in trying to win money because I was like, I saw some names and I was like, ain't no way right now. Ain't no way. I haven't been training. I haven't been skating. Give me a few months to lock in, and I could maybe if I'm somehow like in the 10%, I could maybe win something or breach the top 3. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, I had a wonderful experience. It was hilarious, actually.
It seemed like the amount of talking took away from the ability to focus on landing tricks.
Yeah. I thought of it like a Hot Ones interview, like where Sean Evans is trying to ask someone before they eat the hot wing. That's how I approached Joah's game. I'm not saying I'm Sean Evans. I'm just saying, like, that's how I approached the game.
Remember that backside heel flip statistic from earlier? Well, it rang true in this game, ending Joah's bracket progression and pushing Mowgly ahead to the minor bracket round 2, where he would face the loser of Zach versus Seva, which was the next game.
The day of, when everyone showed up, what was it like seeing that group of people?
I felt like the vibes were pretty laid back. So, of course, like, whenever there's a game of skate, even though over the years I tell myself, like, okay, it's just another game of skate, just do your thing, have fun. The closer it gets to the game of skate, for sure, I like start paying a bit more attention to, like, okay, I want to make sure my setup feels good, my trucks feel good, shoes are broken in, like, just enough, you know?
As you started playing your games, was there something that was distracting to you compared to each of these factors? For example, we have crowd interaction, we have the cracks on the ground, even like the letter boards falling from the wind. Did any of that stuff throw you off a little bit, or were you able to just kind of like shake it off?
I don't think there was anything that threw off the games. For me personally, I felt like, I mean, I saw a lot of comments where people talk about like, oh, there's all these cracks, but I felt like, if anything, it became more of a focus point. I felt like the flat ground was pretty perfect. It's like really smooth, really snappy, and again, it's smooth, but it's not slippery.
Okay.
And then the cracks, I felt like made it more of a focus point where you're just like, okay, whenever I pop, I have to pop, you know, over those cracks.
Yeah.
And I feel like in some scenarios that might have even helped. I do have to say that, as I was talking earlier about trying to make sure my setup feels good, I did have this thing where I felt like the first half of the day, my trucks didn't feel completely how I wanted to have them. It wasn't a brand new set, but I'd been breaking in these trucks for a few weeks, which is enough time to break them in. However, it still felt like they hadn't peaked yet to the point where I really wanted them to be. So as I was warming up, I did notice the day off, my tricks kind of felt like, on one hand, on lock. On the other hand, it also felt like there's no room for error. Like if I even do as little as tic-tac, I might just fall off my board, which, you know, some other days your trucks might feel a certain way where, you know, you might land sketch and you either tic-tac or just kind of like cruise out of it.
A middle-of-the-road game overall in terms of defensive consistency and difficulty, and 2 turns shorter than Chris and Mowgli's longer game, Zach managed to dismantle Seva in 51 turns, putting Krutkov in the minor bracket where he would face Mowgli, and Zach would compete against the winner of Tom versus Chris in Game 8. Tom vs. Chris was the only game besides Snappy vs. Seva that did not have a single turnover, with Asta going first and never losing control of offense. What's distinctly different between Seva and Snappy's game is that Chris landed 15 tricks on defense against Tom, the second most tricks landed on defense in a single game throughout the entire day, and a notable achievement for a game with no turnovers.
Chris, tell me what your thoughts were going into the contest versus once you arrived and everyone was there.
Well, when you first hit me up, initially, kind of wasn't down just because I get really nervous for games of skates, and I just told myself, I'm not going to do this anymore because I just get too nervous and I keep blowing it. So, I don't want to be a disappointment, you know? So, but the fact that you were asking me, that's why I agreed, because I really like your channel. I'm glad I accepted because it turned out great. It was really fun. It was random as hell. I really liked it because I was really nervous, but I think I was just maybe a little less nervous because it was a bit more casual, you know. It didn't feel like, super serious. So that put me at ease a little bit. But I still got really fucking nervous when I was playing. I was like, damn, I'm still nervous? Shit. Why?
You mentioned kind of being worried about not performing well, but you actually landed the most tricks on defense compared to anyone else.
Was that for a specific game or just in total?
Total. You landed 35 tricks on defense. Zach was second at 30.
Really?
You had a 68% defensive success rate, which is 15% higher than the average of everyone else that day. I guess knowing that, do you think that all the experience you have with kind of the more high pressure games helped you skate well under pressure, or was there, you mentioned, the casual nature, was that more of a factor?
I didn't realize how that it went that well. Shit. I guess that Tom Asta game was pretty kind of long on the defensive side. Yeah, it definitely helped that I've had some experience in the past as opposed to none, for sure. But the problem that I have with, let's say, Battle at the Barracks, for example, or anything like that, is with anything, the way to improve nerves is you just practice, right? You just do repetition and you practice. And with those sort of things, they're so rare for me. I could do a Battle at the Barracks contest and I might not ever get to compete in one ever again. So I've only done 3 or 4 of them, and so they're so it's not enough to practice and get good at it. So the nerves just completely come back. If it was more often, a once a month thing, I feel like you could practice and get good at practicing not being nervous. But the infrequency is what I think causes the nerves. I have this memory of one of the Battle of the Barracks. I practiced so much and I became the best I ever was at flat ground, and I was oh my god, I'm gonna win the whole thing because I just I'm not missing tricks anymore. You know, I was so consistent at one point. This is a while ago too, not anymore, and then I just completely choked. And then I thought, okay, this is pointless. There's no point in practicing or even because I just get so nervous, you know.
Do you think that the double elimination helps?
Definitely. 100%. I was going to say that. Yes. That makes it so much easier on the mind. Because even if you do flunk out, you're oh well, I got a second chance to come back and prove myself, you know. Yeah, that made a huge difference in my nerves.
When you played Tom, I think it was the switch hard flip
that got you out. Is that like another kryptonite trick, or you just gone on a streak of landing a lot of tricks on defense? Were you kind of like ready for the game to be done? Because I'm not like saying you gave up or anything, but it seemed like that trick is a little awkward because it like goes between your legs all weird, and you didn't want to like commit to it the way you committed to like the tray double against Seva.
No, it used to be a major, like switch and nollie hard flips used to be a major kryptonite for me. But in the past 2 years, I learned them. But it's not like I have them. It's maybe like 60% of the time I'd say I can do them. Or 50, even 50 maybe even. And then in the game of skate, it's probably even lower. But that one... I thought I was going to land that one, actually. That was kind of shitty that I didn't. Like, I felt like I should have landed that in 2 tries. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Not a strength for sure.
Yeah.
And then on last letter with the nerves and stuff, Like, I felt like I could have landed. That one, that trick feels just like I don't have control over it. Like with the tray double, I can try harder to try to land it. With switch hard flip, it's not about like trying harder. It's just about like the timing of your flick. If you can get lucky, with me at least, like it kind of does its own thing and fucking chooses 50% of the time whether it wants to flip or not. Like I used to try to do them like flicked, and then like one day, like 2 years ago when I started learning, I just said, fuck it, I'm gonna just do them the pressure way, and I just gave up. So you can see in the game, like my toes probably hanging over and trying to just pressure hard flip it.
Tom's second straight victory advanced him to the third round of the finals bracket to face Zach, and Chan's first loss of the day would put him in an immediate turnaround game against Jeff in the minor bracket round 2. All right, I'm going to get a little nerdy with you on a statistic here that I dug up after the games were done. So you individually, you ranked third behind Zach and Chris with the most defensive tricks landed on average at a little over 7 per game. Does that surprise you, or are you familiar
really?
with...
Wait, what, like more than Tom and Seva?
Yeah, because they were on offense most of the time, I guess.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's a little surprising. I will tell you, in the moment of those games, I thought I did horrible. Just because when I played Zach and Chris, it was S to nothing, and just going off that, like that doesn't feel great. But then when I actually watched the games, I was like, oh, I actually landed a good amount of tricks. Those dudes are just cracked. That ranking is a little surprising to hear, but I did realize I landed some stuff on off, so I was proud about that.
Is there anything else you want to leave with everyone before we wrap up?
Yeah, I had a great time, personally. I know one of the games seemed kind of controversial, but, that's whatever. That's just, sometimes people take stuff seriously and whatever. But I had a great time. I wasn't even sure why I was invited. I didn't feel qualified to be in this game of skate.
You won the S game of skate, man. You're qualified.
Yeah, but that was like, I don't know. I actually did a YouTube video about this the other day that I haven't posted yet, but I talked about my game with Jamie. He told me he didn't let me win, but I think he did. But either way, yeah, I don't know. It was a great time, man. A lot of funny stuff happened that day. I saw a lot of sick tricks. I learned how to 540 shove. Yeah, it was. I don't know. People like in the comments were saying like, "Oh, this is toxic. Like this is so awkward. Like, oh, this, like they weren't there. They don't know. They just see what the camera captured." But to me, it seemed like everyone was having a pretty good time. So I just want to clear that up. That like we weren't miserable there. We were like having fun. Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I know more than half the people were having a good time.
Chris handed Jeff a loss, but not without a fight from De Cesare, who landed 11 tricks on defense. This game also featured one of the cleanest illegal tricks when Chris, apologetically I might add, rolled away perfectly from an absurdly immaculate varial double flip. Chan surviving in the minor bracket propelled him to face the winner of Seva vs. Mowgly, a game that was best summarized by this comment. Did you have a strategy after your first game?
No, I just felt really bad that I couldn't perform better. My board was old. I haven't been skating. I'm going to just call it your tournament. It really helped lessen stress and it made it more fun. I just tried to take it as fun. Except for when Seva when he walked up, bro, the aura was crazy. It felt like on some Dragon Ball Z shit where I was like, there ain't no chance. There's no way. Like, even with Chris, I was a little nervous, but I was like, all right, all I gotta do is just land tricks and like try to do tricks that I know I can definitely land. But with Seva, I don't know. There's no way. I don't know what it was.
Snappy and Seva's game was 2 turns quicker, but Krutkov did not want to risk a second loss, closing out the 14-turn game against Mowgly on the first tray double of the day, a trick he may have never missed in any game of skate he's been in, literally landing 30 of the 30 he ever attempted over 7 seasons at the barracks.
Tray double flips. Is there something specific about that trick that is worth telling about like how you learned it? Like, why is it so consistent for you?
I honestly have no real explanation for that one. It's just it's a trick that I learned.
Because you're probably the most consistent in the world with that with that trick. Like, I don't think anybody could land it as many times in a row as you can.
I don't know. It's just a trick that I learned.
Just kind of works.
Probably like it's a trick that I learned like about 18 years ago, and yeah, like you said, it just kind of works, and it's a trick I enjoy doing as much as I do think a regular tray looks better than a tray double, but I do also really like tray doubles. On top of that, it's also a trick that can give people a letter here and there.
Mowgly would join Jeff, Joah, and Snappy in being eliminated from progressing any further, leaving only half of the original 8 alive at this point, at which time Chris Chan and Seva would face each other in the minor bracket 3rd round. But before that game took place, the major bracket's 2 remaining undefeated skaters needed to settle their place in the contest, Zach Doling versus Tom Asta. Statistically speaking, this game was the longest at 79 turns. It featured the most defensive makes in a single game by one skater, Zach landing 18 tricks on defense, and it was the day's most difficult game to win, based on the rest of the field's ability to land similarly attempted tricks on defense, with the average difficulty of defensive tricks landed in this game being 65%, 10% lower than the overall average across all 14 games. Take the difficulty ratings with a grain of salt, however, because the backside heel flip was the most difficult trick to defend compared to the rest of the field, which Tom successfully landed later in that game. Excluding the unwelcome reemergence of 2 more impossible variations and another crack cameo, this type of long back and forth game doing all the fundamentals is what I would personally consider the quintessential game of skate. Because as corny as it sounds, doing the fundamentals shows mutual respect between both competitors with tasteful trick choices, while also exhibiting the dedication put forth to have these tricks first try.
All right, you competed in 2 of the longest games of the day. You and Zach, you guys went for 79 turns, and then the first game between you and Seva was 64 turns. Most people prefer watching longer, more competitive games, but do you, as one of the competitors, prefer longer games, or is it personally less stressful to finish the game quickly?
I personally like longer games, and that's kind of why I usually play them the way that I do, where I kind of run through a lot of basic tricks, just because I feel like that way you're starting off with tricks that, you know, you're good at, you're going to land them most of the time, and that kind of helps get some of those, like, if you're nervous, some of the jitters out, or like just kind of gets you in the flow of the game rather than just trying like something hard straight away. And I think like as a viewer, I respect that too. Like if I'm watching a game of skate and some dude like they wrote Rochambeau and then the first trick's like a double flip or like a switch, you know, something switch, or like I always find that weird.
Right.
I think it's just like, all right, this dude like has one motive, you know, it's to win the game, which I guess at the end of the day, that's why we're all there, right? Someone's got to win, but like there's also a respect, I feel like, or a just like a sportsmanship aspect where you're just going to play the game, you know, you're going to play a good game, whether that's like
give a chance for the other guy to shine like, a little bit.
Kind of, or at least like don't try to just like fucking win, you know, straight off the bat. Like I get we're all trying to win, but like it looks a certain way and it comes off a certain way to a viewer. I feel like if you just first trick is like switch tray and you're like, what the fuck, you know?
You landed a regular frontside big spin against Zach, and it kind of, you know, you kind of had something to say about it. Do you want to elaborate?
I felt like an asshole. Yeah.
What? An asshole?
Yeah, because I was just being honest and like starting off when he did the front big, or I think he
He did a front big spin, right? That's the reason I tried it. There's no way I would set that trick, right? That's what happened. He did it, right?
The regular frontside big spin, I think he set it, and you landed it on defense. It was like, I think you said it was the best one you've ever done.
Yes, but before that, before I tried it, I said this, I suck at this trick. This is gonna be lucky if I do it. I was being kind of a little bitch about it, but in my head, that's really how I feel. That's usually the way it goes. I don't if you go back probably Battle to Barracks and all that stuff. That's a trick that most people will get me a letter on, or if I land it, it's really bad. That's kind of how it's always been for me. So when I landed it, and I landed it the way that I did. I did kind of feel like an asshole. I was like, wow, I'm that dude who's oh, I suck at this trick, and then just land it perfectly. That was not the plan at all. I was actually talking with my homies about that, I think 2 nights ago at the skate park, because someone brought up front big spins, and they brought that up to me. They're like, dude, I saw the one you did in that game, and I was like, yeah, I felt like a dick kind of, because I was playing it I couldn't do it, and then literally did probably the best one I've ever done in my life. I think the ground helped me out a little bit, slippery ground, and I don't know, because sometimes I feel like my tail catches if it's grippy ground or anything, I don't get the rotation right.
Same game, you and Zach. He missed a switch varial heel. You did a switch big heel. It ultimately was your death blow. Was that specifically because you noticed he was struggling with switch varial heels, or was it just kind of the natural progression of your trick choice in that game?
No, I don't even know that was the way that happened until you just said that right now. At that point in the game, I was just pretty much just going off of tricks that I didn't do yet. And, at that point, they were already difficult tricks. So I was like, all right, what haven't I done yet that usually works kind of easily for me? Not really. I don't do that trick that often. But, if I give it my all, I usually can kind of land that trick or at least come really close. So I was like, it's something I'm comfortable with. I know it's kind of hard, so I was like, I'll just give it a shot. And I ended up landing it, which also I was a little surprised that I did it first try. So I was like, all right, cool. That was not on purpose, though, no.
Although a redo on the switch big heel was on the table, audience engagement must have played a factor in Zach deciding to accept defeat, giving Tom his 3rd consecutive win and an automatic guarantee of being at least the runner-up, potentially the grand finals champion, depending on how things played out in the minor bracket, where Zach would face the winner of Seva and Chris's battle. At this point in the tournament, Chris and Seva facing each other made for the most combined high-level game of skate experience in one matchup, and it showed in a clean, controversy-free, minimal referee involvement battle, yet still being a welcomingly high turn count back and forth. Seva may have ended up winning this game, but he needed to work for it. The crack came for Chris in its 4th official appearance of the day, but Chan managed to give Krutkov 2 letters, and while he did end up losing, Chris's defensive performance of landing 11 tricks in this game made him the most defensively productive skater of the day, landing 35 total tricks on defense throughout his 4 games, the only skater to land more than 10 defensive tricks in multiple games, an achievement that will likely push you farther into a tournament as it did with Mr. Chan.
What was something that you felt was a personal highlight for yourself? I mean, you won, obviously, so that's a pretty big highlight, but was that the highlight, or was there anything throughout the day that you did in any of your games that kind of surprised you?
I would say there was a few highlights. One, again, just being up in the mix, being part of this game of skate was really fun. Another highlight for me was being in a game with Chris Chan. I mean, Chris and I go way back. It was kind of like a full circle moment for me because around this time is when I came to the US the first time, but 15 years ago.
Okay.
When I came out here the first time, for the people that are familiar kind of with the story, I used to stay with Chris Chan in the beginning. Back then, there was a friend of ours who hosted a game of skate at the Lake Street Park, which is the park that Chris Chan would always skate. That was 15 years ago, and it's almost like it brought this moment back a bit, if that even makes any sense. I know it's 2 totally different game of skates, but I think that was the last time where Chris and I were in a game of skate in a official setting, if you want to call it that. A big highlight for me was being in having a game with Chris. And then I felt like it was a good game overall. We were letting each other's tricks, and it went on for a bit.
Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Looking back on the games, I wish I did more interesting or circusy kind of tricks.
Forward flips and stuff?
Or I don't know, the varial double flip is cool, because I think of it as a consumer, when I watch those games of skates, that's kind of what I want to see is interesting tricks. I feel like was just like playing it a little too safe, and I wish I did a little bit more just fun tricks. But it's when you're nervous, it's kind of hard to take those risks. You don't feel the confidence to take those risks as much.
Deep in the bracket at this point, with 12 games completed, the only game left before the grand finals was a rematch between Zach and Seva in the minor bracket finals. But because of reasons that you can read about on Slap, that game would not take place due to Doling's unavailability at the time, automatically giving Chris Chan the third place title and bumping Krutkov to the grand finals, where he would face the undefeated Tom Asta.
You made some hat changes. Is that just purely from sweat, or is there some kind of like backstory with changing hats between games?
That's just really from sweating through a hat.
Okay. The LA hat it's just because you have another hat and you want to wear it. There's no like backstory.
No backstory. It's just whenever I go skate, I always bring a few extra t-shirts and a few extra hats.
Gotcha.
That's really what it is.
Because of double elimination, the first game of the grand finals is a what-if game, meaning if the undefeated major bracket skater, in this case Tom Asta, loses against the minor bracket winner, Seva, who already suffered a loss against Zach, an immediate rematch would take place, making the winner of the rematch the overall champion. Because they're the last skater of the day to only lose one time or less. The first grand finals game was professionally competitive, tying Zach and Tom's game with the second most letters given overall at 8 total. Ironically shadowed by Joah and Mowgly's game, where Gifted Hater unfortunately still lost with 6 letters. Going to you and Seva's game, which there's a lot to dissect, but historically, you both have competed in high-level games of skate at Battle at the Barracks, first in Season 8, the year that Seva won the whole thing, and then again in Season 11 when you guys played the third-place game. Did you think back to those games at all when you were finding yourself getting ready to compete against Seva in the grand finals?
No. Honestly, I don't even remember those games at all. Like,
really?
Now that you say that, I'm like, I know I played him in Battle at the Barracks, but I couldn't tell you if it was I just played him in first round, if I played him in finals, I couldn't tell you. And I didn't watch them beforehand either.
What went through your mind when Seva missed the pop shove it in your first game?
That was his trick, right? That was his first trick.
Yeah.
He was going to do a pop shove. I was shocked, honestly. I was kind of weirded out that he even went for a pop shove. Because usually, actually, I don't know if he typically starts out with a pop shove, but his kickflips all day were just ridiculous, like amazing. So I just figured he was going to do one of those and like kind of, because his kickflip's intimidating, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I thought he was just going to do a kickflip. And then he tried that and missed, which was just weird. And that's just a fluke thing. Like, dude, that's the type of shit that happens, though, in games of skate. That's why, like, you can't be like, like me. I'm like, I can't be thinking that I'm 100% going to beat Joah. Like, who knows?
Right.
What happens? Maybe I fuck up on the first trick and he varial flips me to death, That could easily happen. Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, all right, cool. Now I pretty much go first, when he missed that shove. So it was kind of weird. I can't believe he missed it. But it happens.
So you mentioned, you got to go first basically once he misses the pop shove it. So you kind of executed what appeared like a strategy of going through the fundamentals methodically. Mm-hmm. And you actually, in the process, gave Seva 3 letters. I think you, from what I see, you missed a nollie back heel, and then Seva was kind of digging in a little with his special stuff. And once he was missing I think the nollie late flips, and then I think you were going for switch double heels, which seemed like a switch in your strategy. Was that on purpose, or did you plan on shifting like away from the fundamentals at a certain point?
I knew that game was going to go that direction at some point, but I think that's more like me being in the mix of it all at that time. And I see him trying nollie late flips, and I'm just thinking, like, in my head, I'm like, this dude's a machine, like, what am I going to really get this dude a letter on? Was my thought process. Not really thinking about the more, like, the simplicity of it, where, like, because I talked to Kelly Hart after the game, and he's like, dude, you should have just kept doing, like, any basic normal trick you could have thought of. Like, he already missed 3 of them. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. But, like, in the mix like that, it doesn't feel that way. I don't even realize that's, like, what's happening. I wasn't, like, in tune with it enough. I just see, and I know it's going to have to be, like, a high-level, like, battle of crazy tricks is what I think, because I know that's where he's going to go. And I think that's why that's definitely a shift in my strategy. I don't even like to do double flip shit, like, ever. But in my head at that time, I was just thinking like, what do I get this dude letters on? Because he's about to like fuck me up, basically is what I was thinking. Cause I know personally, I don't think of myself as having like weird or crazy tricks, like I'm a pretty, like, I can do a lot of tricks, but they're not weird ones or like 540s or double flips or stuff like that he has. I don't really have that stuff like at all that on lock. So I was just trying to think of shit that I could possibly get him on. And I think like he could switch heel obviously, but I don't know if he could really do switch double heels. That's kind of a weird one.
Right.
He's more of like a switch flipper. So that was like the thought behind it, I guess.
The second longest game of the day, also shadowed by Zach and Tom's marathon, Seva and Mr. Asta condensed some NBDs into their first matchup that were exactly what you want to see when the top two seeds face each other in the last part of the contest. Tom executed the Old Faithful tactic of pulling apart his opponent through an offensive assault of fundamentals, giving Seva 3 letters, before missing his first, albeit rocky relationship with the nollie back heel, putting Krutkov in the driver's seat. Recognizing a loss would result in a $750 difference between first and second, Seva did not waste time introducing formidable flip tricks, exemplified first by a double flip. Rising to the challenge of staying alive on defense, however, Tom reminded everyone in attendance, and later to the online audience of course, why he's in the grand finals when he perfectly called Seva's offensive maneuver, rolling away unscathed and letterless on a double kickflip.
Tom did a defensive fakie hard flip against Seva, and it got a relatively strong reaction from you. I don't know if you remember that, but if you do you care to elaborate?
Oh, dude, I was surprised that Tom, okay, I've known Tom for a long time, and like I know his tricks that he can and can't do, and I know that he can't hard flip. And I think most people know that know him. If you played him in skate or whatever, he just can't hard flip. So the fact that he landed a fakey hard flip blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen you do that in my life. So I just thought it was funny. He can do a hard flip, but the only times he ever does hard flips in games of skate on defense.
Okay.
Like that's the only time you ever see him do hard flips. So that's why I just thought it was funny. I don't think I've ever seen him do a fakey hard flip ever. People that watched his game with Seva they were tripping because nollie late front foot flip and the switch late back foot flip and like the 540 flip were all tricks in the fakey hard flip, in my opinion, which is funnier because it's more a common trick that he can't do. It was like, that was entertaining to me to see him land these tricks that I just like, how the hell do you I've never seen you do that shit. So I just thought that was funny.
Just like Tom applied pressure with his bag of fundamentals to steadily whittle down Krutkov, Seva had his own plan, introducing the signature tray double and capitalizing on one of Mr. Asta's rare weaknesses, regular hard flips, tying the game after the backside hard miss on defense. Another familiar source of Seva's devastation is derived from 540 flip and shove variations. And after Tom got T on a 5 pop, the sequential 5 flip appeared to confirm a rematch was guaranteed. But we're talking about Tom Asta. After educating Dale on the difference between a 5 pop and a 5 flip, Tom landed the 540 flip first try with a smile.
What was the mindset going into your 540 flip on defense? You were talking with Dale and then you casually landed it first try. Were you expecting that to happen?
I wasn't expecting it to happen. I've done that trick before though. And I know how it's weird. It's kind of like I know how to do it. It's just whether it really works or not, that try. Basically the way I think about that trick is I just do it like a tray flip and I try and keep my feet. I spin it harder, but I don't flick it any harder. And then I just try to keep my feet in the air longer. And then I think that's why I landed like in the little like center of my board a little bit. My feet were really close together just because I was like holding my feet in the air, waiting for it to come around that extra 180. But for me, the 540 flip's easier because it's kind of like the 540 shove it. You have to worry about it flipping. But the 540 flip, you flip it anyway. I don't know. I just got lucky. I landed one. I know how to do it, but I could have easily missed it just as easily as I made it.
4 consecutive turnovers ensued, leading to Seva rolling away from a nollie late front foot flip, which seemed like an even more probable finish to the game than the 540 flip, but we're talking about Tom Asta.
We make it look godlike.
Landing a double flip, 540 flip, and a nollie late front foot flip on defense, from what I've personally observed, has to be one of, if not Tom's single best defensive performance in a game captured on camera, including all of his barracks games. Seva's obsession with the frontside double gave Tom one more chance to slow things down and go back to the original strategy of throwing out the fundamentals. But Asta similarly struggled after deviating from plan A by attempting multiple switch double heels, turning the game into a relatable shootout of tougher, less consistent tricks for each individual. Krutkov's persistence paid off, landing the frontside double flip on the 4th attempt, and that one would be the dagger that turned the grand finals into a rematch. Thanks to Dale's quick thinking, his suggestion to only allow new tricks in the rematch was a good one, because it showed just how deep both Seva and Tom's bags are, even though the second game was nearly half as long as the first, and the 4th shortest of the day at 35 turns. Both Tom and Seva had 2 turnovers, giving each individual a couple chances to turn the tides in their favor. But Krutkov's duo of double flips on top of a couple fundamentals that Asta was unlucky with defensively led to the game's highlight, where Asta successfully defended the switch late flip before a fakie 5 pop that would ultimately seal the deal and complete the tournament, crowning Seva Krutkov as the overall champion and leaving the park with a trophy and $1,000 richer. Do you have experience with late flips?
Used to do the nollie front foot flip ones quite a bit, so I do, but I would usually try to do them off bumps or like over a hip or something where I get like a little extra hang time, and made it easier for me. I don't think I've ever done the switch one, the switch back foot flip, but essentially, like when I was trying it, or when I thought about trying it right before I was riding up, I was like, this is the same trick. It's just I'm riding in that direction. So that's the way I thought about it. And I just made sure to like peek or like bone out my switch ollie enough to then be able to flick the because if you rocket it, it's not going to work. So you have to like kind of bring it, you have to get to your like peak of your switch ollie and then just like give it the flick of the back foot. And that's exactly what I thought in those like 5 seconds riding up to it. I was like, I need to just switch ollie high as shit and then do a kickflip, and it worked. But I don't think I've ever done that before that day. I've only done the nollie ones. But I think just defense in general, you know, you always feel you're going to try like your hardest at that time. Like you have all the motivation in the world at that moment to try to land it, as to where like if someone were to just walk up to me and be like, oh, can you do back foot flip? I'd be like, oh, I'll try, and like probably give it a half-ass attempt at like maybe I'll land it, maybe I won't. But like in those moments, you just try way harder. You know, you got eyes on you. You want to do well. And like also even playing Seva, like there was always a thought in my head that like, I might be losing this game. But even if I lose a game, like I want to make sure that I put on a good game at least, and like I feel even good about it at the end, you know. And that's exactly what happened. So I think I even said to Kelly, I was like, I know I lost, but like I kind of feel like I won right there. That's like how I felt after the game. No, it was cool. I was stoked on the way that I skated against him, and he's just a machine, dude. The dude has so many tricks. It's just ridiculous.
Were there any performances apart from your own game during the day that surprised you?
I know Chris Chan has like a huge bag of kind of wild tricks, and I was excited to see him skate, and he skated really well too. I think that he could have even done better. Like I think I got dealt good cards that day. I know that doesn't answer your question, but like I went first in most of my games, and I think that's what kind of helped me out.
It would be irresponsible and hypocritical of me as a channel that has historically criticized the Barracks for their plethora of missed calls on toe touches and heel touches and this, that, and the third, without addressing Seva's heel touch on a trick that he ironically was famous for calling himself out at in the Barracks against Chris Joslin, the frontside double flip that ended the first grand finals game against Tom. Yes, his heel touched, as indicated by the footage. To be fair, similar to the impossibles from earlier games, without a replay system, in real time, the trick looks clean. And I would argue that toe touches are worse than heel touches, because the momentum of rolling away is more negatively affected by toes than heels. Seva had a toe touch at the Barracks. In CFS, he had a heel touch. And while it's true, a touch is a touch, the bigger picture to paint here is that it probably wouldn't have mattered much either way. If you think about it, doing an immediate rematch with no repeats against the same skaters is basically playing one game with 10 letters. And Seva only got 1 letter in his rematch against Tom, a game where Asta had 2 separate opportunities to control the trick selection, meaning that, yes, Seva should have redone his frontside double death blow from the first game, but when you see the outcome of game 2, it's hard to argue that a redo would have changed the final outcome. Regardless, because this could be a bigger issue in future games, Potential death blows, particularly in later stages of the contest, need to be observed with eagle eyes, if not formally reviewed, even if they land bolts to make sure the correct skater ends up winning. Which I'm confident in saying is ultimately what happened in the first CFS contest, by Seva walking away the champ. The dust may have settled and the sun set on the first CFS tournament, but the magic of well-executed flat ground between living legends and skateboarding permeates throughout that one little rectangular section of the $1.5 million, 40,000 square foot Santa Clarita skate park to this day. And rumor has it that if you pull up to the park with your board, you'll leave your session with no less than one new unlocked, legal flip trick to take with you on your journey through life.